Hi, and welcome back to Plan 9 Crunch, where today we're looking at another cult film Curiosity from Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. I'm Joe Gibson, and Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah is a controversial film, and I treated it as self-evident that it is pro-Japanese imperialism in World War II, or beyond, but there is some debate on this point, I guess, and it does warrant more in-depth exploration. First, I define imperialism as economic or military control of an area, with colonialism being inhabiting from area. So the imperialist aims are what we focused on in this thing. And there's imperialism in the island inhabitation of the Japanese garrison, but also imperialism in the Futurians' plan to use King Ghidorah to strong-arm them into economic subservience to wherever the terrorists come from. They are terrorists, these Futurians. They're nebulously tied to the aims of the Earth Union, but not explicitly. So some radical sect of it, and that'll be important later on. They're not being identified with a larger structure, but they are still taking actions that could be viewed to promote world peace, like an actual world peace of equal footing. Revisionist propaganda is also a topic. I will be looking at a journal article. I wrote an essay on this topic at one point. It was not a very good topic. I was trying to apply actual revisionist history propaganda strategies to Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, and we'll get more into that later. You won't see the essay anytime soon. It's not a good essay, and I can just summarize those points here. But first, I want to read off the TV tropes analysis of this movie and argue against it, because I use TV tropes a lot. It's a very good resource to refresh my knowledge on stuff and amass tropes and cross-reference tropes. Very good for that purpose. It's powered by its users that are very passionate about this stuff and very knowledgeable, but I take large issue with this. So first they say, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah has a significant, that's a typo, significant hidden depth to it, however without historical context and knowledge of the events leading up and during World War II, another typo, it would fly over your head like King Ghidorah does. This film has some controversy. Japanese nationalism and ethnocentrism is all over this movie, and is done so in a film where Japanese World War II veterans are in leadership positions, that was me reading it wrong, and called the men who rebuilt Japan's economy. I will chime in, Shindo specifically, Major Shindo, is the specific figure there that's identified with. He's a sympathetic character. And he also has a privately owned nuclear warhead. But don't worry about that. And thanks to the time travelers, we know that this economy grows unabated into an economic superpower that dominates the world. 23rd century global jealousy of Japan is a major plot driving force, so it is not easy to overlook this controversy in the film. What does it mean to say Japan purchased Africa and South America? It does say that, yes. The movie doesn't explore that, so we are left to our own imagination. The concept of purchasing Africa is not morally sound. The African slave trade is a shameful part of American history, just as the events before and during World War II are shameful for Japan. Also, it's shameful for America. That should be mentioned, I think, in terms of the internment camps. That comparison is made because this movie is talking about both in utero. I don't think it mentioned the African slave trade, but we'll see what they say. The path that Shindo has set for his country in years after World War II at first glance seems like an unbridled success. But thanks to successive time-traveling events, that same path also erases Japan from existence until other time-traveling shenanigans again find a way to save Japan, but also make it a normal part of the Earth's civilization instead of completely dominating it. I don't really know if that's true. We don't ever see... They'll say later that we don't ever see that third timeline, and yeah, but it's a weird thing to blame Shindo for terrorist actions. Like, the terrorists are who derail the timeline by being so terrible at time travel, as I talked about, that they somehow violate a stable time loop. Okay, Shindo has a relationship with Godzilla that in many ways parallel Moby Dick. Shindo personifies a proto-Godzilla's accidental protection as altruistic, only to be disappointed when Godzilla is in fact a come-one, come-all humanity destroyer. That is true. That nuclear submarine that Shindo has, that he's keeping in another nation's waters, because Japan is not allowed to have those, much less civilians in Japan. They use that to revive Godzilla because they think that he has been erased from time, but he clearly hasn't been. It makes him grow to 100 meters tall and makes him more aggressive, which then means that when he destroys King Ghidorah, he doesn't stop attacking. Now, this Godzilla is always sort of like that. This is the first movie in the Heisei series where he is the better option for a little bit, but it takes until Space Godzilla for him to be the hero. Shindo's sadness and willingness to die reflects several key points. Shindo acknowledges that the path Japan is on is wrong, and he's willing to step aside to let new leaders forge a direction. I don't really see that in the movie. The success he's enjoyed since World War II does not absolve the horrors he may have even participated in during said war. We don't see him do any horrors or atrocities, though. He is the noble leader of the Lagos garrison. He's framed as a much better, more serious leader than the Americans that are in the island battle. And also, it's very ambiguous what Godzilla is thinking and what Shindo is thinking when Godzilla kills him. So I really don't agree with this. The larger picture of Shindo allowing himself to die is one of true existential horror. How could this be us? Some soldiers were good, many were not. And that is the dark demeanor Shindo wears as he sees Godzilla's inexorable reproach. I defended Japan, Godzilla defended me, Godzilla is evil, what am I? I mean, we don't see a single bad Japanese soldier in this movie. It'll go on to say that the American soldiers are affable, but they're still like the bad guys in the thing so clearly. And their affable nature comes not to make them more sympathetic, but to make them less serious. We'll get into like the ways that the film postures the Japanese and American soldiers, but like it seems like propaganda to me. And I guess we'll continue a little bit. It is only through historical knowledge that a person can catch these messages. So these messages go right over the head of the young viewers. That is fine. Children do love Godzilla, and there's no reason to show them the true horrors of war and war crimes. This film doesn't. Shindo's leadership post-World War II and into the future as shown us by time travelers suggests that Shindo's Japan was still comfortable with nationalism and aggression, this time carried out by money, Japan's globally dominant economy, rather than guns, Imperial Japan's army. Shindo realizes that the future he's forging is beset by time-traveling terrorists. Why are we blaming him for the terrorists? He realized that for a Japan that is future-proof, Japan needs to be cooperative, not hegemonic. His path is towards hegemony, but that way leads to incalculable deaths. So he allows himself to die so that the hegemonic Japan of the future will not exist as it does in the first future, which also prevents the second future where Japan does not exist at all. Well, no, Godzilla is the one. Okay, so basically, the time travelers, for their plan to work, they needed to destroy Shindo at some point in time so that he couldn't industrialize. They do target his buildings with King Ghidorah, but they don't target him for whatever reason, and it's Godzilla who finishes that job for them. And once Godzilla kills Shindo, that is associated with the future where Godzilla destroys Japan. So, okay, at the end of the movie, the time traveler returns to what is now the third future. One, the audience never learned anything about, but we do know that Japan does not dominate the world, and that Japan does. We don't know that. We really don't know that. If we don't know anything about it, we don't know anything about it. I'll just skip ahead to the next paragraph. There is controversy in this movie. Japanese nationalism is on full display at times. There is no anti-Americanism. If anything, Americans are depicted as very kind and affable. The white people antagonists are clearly transnationalists with no ties to current states, and the dialogue gives away that they are actually radical terrorists, not representing any state. This movie ultimately heavily criticizes Japanese nationalism. Thus, Japanese nationalism was included, and it is what is controversial. I mean, the Americans in the movie are antagonists. We have the two Futurians, Wilson and Glenchico, who are not redeemed. M11, who is redeemed but is explicitly a robot, not a human. And the World War II battalion, who are funny, idiot, bad guys. Okay, so I'm going to go on to my actual point here about how it maps onto points of revisionist propaganda. And so this is a journal article by, I believe, Tamara Trost. So it's about 1990s war propaganda in the former Yugoslavia. You can pick on me a little bit for talking about Bosnia, Herzegovina, Croatia, and Serbia in terms of how it maps onto Japanese sentiment in the 1990s. I don't really have access to the Japanese textbooks in 1990, and if they taught a different version of World War II, but like these are patterns noted by scholars of actual propaganda and how they worked in the 1990s. That's good enough for me. So they identified 5 strategies here. 1, changing the labeling of victims and perpetrators. 2, introducing completely new events or keeping certain events silent. 3, explicit connecting of the Second World War with present-day events. 4, use of dehumanizing and emotionally laden text. And 5, highlighting victimization of the in-group, even in events when it was the perpetrator. So first of all, we can knock off many of these points at the same thing. Let's say 1 and 5 at least. So change in the labeling of victims and perpetrators, highlighting victimization of the in-group, even in events where it was the perpetrator. So the Lagos Island garrison, what are they doing there? They're being attacked by Americans. There are no indigenous people that they're wiping out, or anything, or controlling, imperializing, colonizing, anything like that. It's just they are the victims on this island. And the only living thing there, Godzilla, the Godzillasaurus, takes their side. Doesn't attack a single Japanese soldier, only attacks the US island hopping forces. Introducing new events. This is a fictitious event of a island that does not exist, a battle that does not exist. It's a battle that the Japanese win with the help of the Godzillasaurus. Again, they win the thing. 3, explicit connecting of the Second World War with present-day events. I mean, Shindo. He wins the battle. He rebuilds Japan after Godzilla's attacks in 54, 84. And then he is the key figure that is leading things forward in 1992 into the future. You don't get more blatant than that, really. Use of dehumanizing and emotionally laden text. I had a thing for that at one point. But you can see, this is using actual tropes, actual strategies, actual ideas present in revisionist history propaganda. This is not a movie that's criticizing the nationalism of Japan or the imperialism. It could be doing a lot more, and it wouldn't have to be slipping into these pro-imperialist ideas in order to give that message. It's as easy as just showing the dinosaur attacking the Japanese troops too, but not Shindo. If you want Shindo to have this whole arc, he's off screen for most of the movie, mind you. His main contribution is keeping a nuke as a Deus Ex Machina to help Godzilla, and yes, that backfires, but we don't spend any time with him. He doesn't go on the time travel thing. He's framed entirely through Terasawa, who likes him, or at least doesn't hate him. And it's so ambiguous as to what's actually going on. When Godzilla kills him, the only thing that you can focus on is Godzilla crying, but even that wasn't done quite well because they hadn't ironed out the technology yet. Once he cries in Godzilla vs. Destroy, it's much better, much more well-defined. So, again, I have a pretty strong stance. This movie is pro-imperialism. You can agree. I hope you disagree for better reasons than TV tropes on their analysis page, but they have a lot of hidden gems on TV tropes. This is the outlier, the bad essay. And hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching. We are on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and we have a blog, planetcrunch.com. Thank you all for watching. That's a wrap.